anyone there. We will try to close to 8:30 as we possibly can, but we want everyone to have time to get their questions answered. And we're also here, I think, in many ways, to help. We want to help the young people here tonight. And anything we can contribute to their knowledge, that will be part of this too. So it's a two-way conversation and really an important one. So how many of us have a young person in our life whose future you worry about right now? Ah! Okay. And we could spend a lot of time talking about why that is, what it is that you worry about. I think we'll get some of that information as we go along. You may be feeling afraid or sad, or maybe you feel really excited and hopeful. So let's see where we are at the end of the meeting.
Stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. There's a general feeling for all involved, I suspect. Yeah. I think we agree it is complex and that we may not be able to relate to a lot of what's going on, maybe LA, for instance, at the moment. I think back at a crossroads in my life and ask you, where were you in the 60s? I returned from the Peace Corps in 1964 to hometown of Berkeley. What happened? I went to UC Berkeley to get a California teaching credential in that year. There was no longer the sleepy Berkeley of the 50s. And it was a sleepy college town, university town. There was Mario Salvio. There were riots on campus. Professors who would not cross the picket lines set up by the students because they wanted to honor the students, which was truly a remarkable thing. Sather Gate, Telegraph Avenue. I was 25 that fall and not really terribly interested. I had seen a whole other world in Africa for 2 years. My college years had been very peaceful and heck of fun. What was all this? What was going on? So, Eric and Miles, Eric will be joining us, help us understand your generation during this also very critical crossroad time that we find ourselves in today. Their bios, by the way, are posted on the website so you can read it in greater detail. But tell us who you are today and how you got here. Please welcome our young guest today.
Can everyone hear me? No. Use the other one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm way ahead. We have announcements first.
Sure, this one works now. Sounds like.
You know what? I forgot.
I'll take that.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. We skipped.
This will be very quick. I hate to take up your valuable time. Thank goodness to see you all here. This is wonderful.
We want to hear you.
Oh, you want to hear me better? Is that better?
Loud.
Oh, I'm right into the mic.
That's good.
So I want to bring to your attention the Sonoma County Conservation Action Fundraiser that's happening June 28th, 5 to 8:30 at Sally Tomatoes. You know where that is, down on our park. This is a really important event for raising money for climate change. And this issue seems to get swept under the rug quite a bit, and I'd really like to see a lot of us from Oakmont going down there. You can actually get a table, but it's cheaper to buy the ticket one by one. They're $100. I went last year. They have an auction. They have good speakers. It's something worth attending. Think about it. There's some flyers on the back table. I also wanted to mention I brought some blank signs here. You're welcome to take them. There are 4 of them. So if you want to take one home and make your own sign for the No Kings event, which is happening next Saturday. We're also doing a carpool at the Burger. We're going to be leaving at 10:15. So anybody who would like to carpool, you need to be there around 10 o'clock, and then we'll find you a car. So this is a big deal. We hope we'll see you there.
Who else has an announcement? And yes, and this gentleman is from Clean Money, and he's going to tell us a little bit.
Hi there, a lot of you already know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is David Schmidt. I'm the San Francisco and North Bay coordinator for California Clean Money Campaign. We are the sponsors of the California Fair Elections Act. That's a bill in the legislature this year to allow public campaign funding for candidates who take no large contributions. And this bill would be allowing public campaign financing for any city or county or for the state legislature or the governors or the state elected officials. And it's really a matter of reviving democracy and taking it away from big money, because this would get a lot of the big money out of elections by allowing candidates to run and win with public campaign financing and no large contributors. Examples are Karen Bass of Los Angeles, mayor of Los Angeles. She ran with public campaign financing. Janet Napolitano from Arizona ran for governor and won twice with public campaign financing. And the current mayor of Berkeley ran with public campaign financing. And she was at an event that we had on May 18th. I know Jim Stevenson was there with me, and the mayor of Berkeley said, I wouldn't have been able to be elected. She's a young person, a young Asian American. I wouldn't have been able to be elected without public campaign financing. So there are some states that have it, just a few. Most states don't. Here in California, just 5 cities have it. We want it to go statewide and allow every city and county and the state itself to have it. So we've been circulating this petition. A lot of you have already signed it. And we do different volunteer events. Right now, our bill is going through the legislature. It has just passed last week the state Senate. Now it goes to the state assembly. We're going to be going to the state assembly elections committee hearing and asking any of you who can go with us to go with us. I will be driving. I live in Oakmont. I can pick you up. It's going to be sometime in July. It's going to be one of 2 Wednesdays in July, and I'll pass around a sign-up sheet for that, which will also include signing up for this Saturday, going to the No Kings event, the No Kings protest in Santa Rosa, where we will be circulating our petition. We go to protests, we circulate the petition, we grow the movement for the California Fair Elections Act, which is going to have an impact for generations to come if we can get it passed. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for giving me 5 minutes to talk, and I'm going to pass around the petition. You don't need to sign it if you already have. I'm also going to pass around the sign-up sheet for this Saturday petitioning and going to Sacramento in July. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And he will be around for this entire program, so maybe you can catch up with him later if you have more questions or anything of that nature.
Just one last thing. If people have filled out petitions, you can give them to me after the meeting. I'll be here. If you want petitions, I've got them. I'll give you petitions.
So he has petitions to give you. If you want to take them away, or if you brought some with you, be sure you give them to him before he leaves. Yeah. Any other announcements that anything that you think is really critical and important we all know? Okay. Well, then we will now turn this over. The gentleman who's not here was going to be first because he had these double booked for the night, and I think he's trying to be in 2 places at once. But we're going to start off with Miles, and I'll let you introduce yourself. You've been here before. Some of you have met him already, and then he brought company.
Wonderful, thank you. So hello everyone, my name is Miles Dillingham. I am the president of Sonoma State Young Democrats. I was also recently elected regional director for the Bay Area for College Dems and regional director for the North Coast for Young Democrats. And I'd like to just start by sharing what my goal is for those 2 positions. It's to take the Democratic Party and move it to the left, to make it the party of young people again. To do this, we're going to be building a lot of Young Democrat clubs at different college campuses and different places that don't have Young Dem clubs. And we're going to create a progressive web of Young Dems, the people who really go out and do a lot of canvassing, that are willing to do the work for free because it's, one, we care, two, we have a lot of energy to give, and three, it's good work experience. So using those three incentives, the Young Dems are going to become a workhorse for the progressive movement. In 8012, there are a lot of candidates running. So our theory right now is that it's not going to be possible for any of them to get the statewide endorsement. So instead, with the void of the statewide and county Democratic Party, Young Dems become the only voice of Democrats in the area. So this is our way of making Democratic candidates progressive. So that's a bit about the mission. But my name is SSUYoungDemocratClubTALKOakmontDemoc. I am a third year at Sonoma State University. I'm studying political science. I grew up in Southern California, but came up here to play lacrosse primarily. But when I got to campus, I realized there's no political organization on campus aside from Turning Point USA, a nonpartisan group who has done so much tremendous stuff for our campus. So I figured start a Young Dems Club. So in the spring of 24, we were founded, and then in November, or fall rather, of 24, we had our first, campaign season. We started by getting connected to WCYB, who at the time was under Eric as president, the president is now Jexy, and they've done a tremendous job. Wine Country Young Democrats. They are the Young Dems group who's been in the area before we got here. They've done a lot of organizing. They used to be run by a lot of moderate staffers, but since Eric has showed up and Ileana, Eric, who just arrived, it has become a far more progressive organization that has done a lot to get young people involved. Some of the issues that I really care about, some of them have to do with the messaging of the party, the strategy that I think they need to use, and then some of them are the actual issues themselves. The actual issue is consolidation of wealth and the transfer of wealth away from working and middle-class families. At the end of the New Deal, about 60% of American households were considered middle class. Right now, about 40% are considered middle class. So 20% of that wealth that was considered American families has disappeared. It didn't just disappear. In fact, our GDP has risen a lot since then. So where has it gone? It's gone to the companies, the corporations, and the oligarch billionaires who have used the government as a way to siphon money away from working families. They do this through a number of ways. A lot of it can be seen through like government contracts. Take the military, where they charge $15 for a can of Coke. That's absurd, but that's money coming from your pockets that doesn't get put back into the community because the companies who get that money don't get taxed. So this money disappears. They also do it through programs like school choice, where the government will pay for students to go to private schools, but these private schools aren't giving that money back. The private schools have the right to choose who gets into these schools, so not only is it not guaranteed to serve every child in the community, it often ends up being the wealthy kids. And also geographically, not everyone is able to get to these schools. So it doesn't serve anyone except the people running that, the people whose children benefit from it, and those people are often the already rich who could afford to pay it anyways. So this is how wealth gets transferred out of the public and into the hands of the private sector. This is not helpful. It's actually, it's horribly bad for people. If we look at companies like BlackRock, where they get money through all their different stock holdings, they're in deep in a lot of the S&P 500. So they take that money, they use it to buy housing. Because this huge corporation is purchasing housing, people like us are competing against them. And there's just no way for us to do that. So we're stuck renting instead. And when we rent, where does our money go? To BlackRock, the people who own the homes. So it becomes really hard for us to ever get a leg up. And the more that this wealth is consolidated in the hands of these corporations, the harder and harder it becomes. And these corporations are the ones funding the right. If we look at Elon Musk, who gave $500 million to Trump's campaign, That's not just, oh, I like Donnie, let's get him elected. That is a $500 million investment. He expects returns on that. And so does every other corporation and billionaire who gave money to the campaigns. So when we look at things that Doge is doing, like the big beautiful bill, the tax cut they're going to give, this is a return on investment for them. It's another transfer of wealth that we will have to shoulder. That's the issue that I think needs to be focused on the most, is the transfer of wealth. Because when we lose money, they gain more power. It becomes increasingly difficult for us to fight back. If you have to work 3 jobs to feed your family, you don't have time for political advocacy. They just keep you under their boot, and eventually, there's nothing you can do about it, because at the end of the day, you need food on the table. So when we look at that, it's an issue that can be connected to every single issue, to every political group on the right. Somehow, they contribute to this issue. What the Democrats have been doing has allowed them to do this. I feel that the Democratic Party has used social issues as smokescreens to hide their inactivity on economic ones. I agree with a lot of what has been done in the past 8 years. I think it was needed, and I'm glad that it happened. I think we could all agree that it's a lot safer to grow up, given what progress has been made. But a lot of the establishment Democrats, the ones who aren't on the local level, the ones in the DNC, they don't really care about this. They care about getting reelected and having their corporate donors. So they've used these issues to avoid talking about economic issues. And it worked for a time. But if we look at 2024 and the Harris campaign, a lot of her messaging was around social issues and things are fine in the economy, we just need to stay the course. And that wasn't exciting to young people. Because right now, we grew up in a generation where it's a given that you accept gay people, that everyone is created equal. Right now, the issues that are on our minds are economic. Will we be able to afford a home? Will we ever be able to be unshackled from our college debt? It's these issues that matter to us, not the things that we have grown up with and that we will fight to keep. There's no doubt, there's no going back on those issues. Nobody in our generation would want that. So the Democrats need to recognize this and begin talking about economic issues. I guess I've rambled maybe for a little more than 5 minutes, so I'll pass it on to other people. This is Eric, this is Amanda, and Megan, who are both from the SSU Young Dems Club, and I'll let them do the rest.
Hi, my name is Amanda Gilbert. I am the treasurer of the Sonoma State Young Democrats. I am a second year at Sonoma State and an environmental science major with a concentration in environmental systems. I primarily was interested in joining the Young Democrats because I care a lot about the environment, given my major. I grew up in Marin County, which is, it's absolutely beautiful, and it pains me to think that people won't have that growing up. Climate change is obviously the forefront of our lives right now. If we don't address the environmental issues, we're not going to have a world. I fear that, I don't know if I even want to bring kids into this world if they won't have a place to grow up. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Myers, and I'm and in the fall, I will be a second year at Sonoma State University, and I recently joined the Young Democrat Club at Sonoma State, and I'm here as a learner. I kind of recently started getting into activism, and I wish that I had been more involved earlier, but I think recognizing that and now ready to jump on the bandwagon and ready to change is really important. And so right now my job is I'm a stewardship specialist for a nonprofit in the area called Land Paths. We do conservation work and we do a lot of community involvement. Also, we just started an initiative called the Right Relations, which aims to recognize that natives were the first people on the land. So, and that the land that we steward is their land, past, present, and future. So that's the work that I'm doing and that I will continue to do, and that's what I'm passionate about as we have the same major, environmental science. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you all.
Hi everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. My name is Eric Vasquez. I'm the former president of the Wine Country Young Democrats. I was just at their Pride Mixer right now helping get things situated, so forgive me if I keep it brief or if I'm just here for a little bit. I have to hop back over there because I'm still their comms director, so I'm on their e-board, so I gotta do a little work over there. But for those who don't know me, I graduated from UC Berkeley, go Bears, in 2022, and kind of it felt like almost everything fell into place with my life. I was studying poli-sci, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew, I had a very, very strong drive to be involved in activist spaces. I didn't know to what level or to what degree, but as I was nearing my time at Berkeley, I was approached by folks from the Wine Country Young Democrats, and at the time, their current president, Ileana Madrigal. For those who don't know her, she works for the North Bay Labor Council, but she was president at the time. And she had heard me speak at a number of smaller things, Democratic related, and she said, yes, I want you to be our vice president. I'm not asking, you're being voluntold. So one thing led to another, and at the time I was very unsure of what I was doing, but I kind of started getting my bearings and started getting more involved. And as time progressed, one of the things that really became clear to me was, as much as we do talk about issues that are happening on the federal level or even on the state level, which are very important and they affect our lives in very, very strong ways because this is federal policy. One thing that I have grown to really admire and respect about the crowds that I see here, what we're doing on a local level, is that the local level issues really do matter. And that's where we see the direct results in our backyard almost at an instant. I know in my neck of the woods in Petaluma, we're going through a whole bunch of weird, unusual changes with our downtown and push and pull between, do we want to see growth, do we not want to see growth? But it's just one of the many examples that we see that really does bring it all home and really does lead to the larger issues that we will see eventually unfold on the national stage. Miles had mentioned BlackRock. One of the things that I've been telling people in Petaluma is we have a number of mobile home parks that are being attacked by our own version of BlackRock on a local level. And as a result, a lot of these companies are wanting to force people out, either forcing them to sell their mobile home parks that they own the right to, and then bring in new incomes, higher incomes, and try to gentrify the neighborhoods. And that's something that you look at it and you think about what people are going through in their day-to-day lives. And oftentimes you think, oh, wait a minute, that's happening on a national level. But here is where, as young Dems, as people who are active, who we feel that oftentimes we may not be able to have that big direct fight with that particular man in the White House, but I find a lot of comfort in knowing that what we do here locally, for the candidates that we elect, for the things that we advocate for, can really have ripple effects on our community, the people that I see right here. And so all of that is just to bring it full circle and say that I've really doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on my efforts locally. I'm the vice chair of the transit committee for the city of Petaluma. I'm on the board for Sonoma County Conservation Action, and some of you also may know me being involved with Working Families Party, but current comms director as well for Wine Country and Dems, and the former campaign manager for Caroline Banuelos, the first Latina to the center of the city council. So a lot of interesting things that I've been involved with, thank you. But that's where my passion comes from, and we can, I stress it over and over again, but it really does make a difference when we're involved locally, because then that creates the ripple effects on a national level.
Wow.
So I think we'll go in for a Q&A now. Is that what's?
We have
suppose, what do you think of the idea I put forward of focusing on economic instead of social issues? And to clarify, it's not to abandon social issues. We won't regress, but it's to shift the focus of the Democratic Party to this populist, economic-oriented solution. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take, for instance, you said, wait for the mic. Okay, sorry, that's all right. I know better than that, I forgot. So you talked about social issues being a screen, but think about, okay, you said, well, we young people, we've been raised knowing that it's okay to be gay. But who's in the White House right now, and what's the current government doing about it? And do you still think it's not important? These issues are not important?
No, so we do need to defend it, especially when we are under attack from the federal government. We will not be abandoning any members of our community. I suppose what I'm saying is we need to do what the Republicans have done and go on the offensive with our issues, right? I feel like we've been kind of on the back foot a lot of the time, and they use those issues against us, right? That's how they villainize a lot of candidates like Bernie Sanders. They say he's woke, communist, they slander him with everything. But when we begin bringing up issues like the transfer of wealth, like healthcare for all, it makes it so that they have to focus on those issues instead of, say, transgender athletes in sports.
Okay, just a really quick one. For instance, it was Democrats who got Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act in, which is now they're trying to completely deconstruct it. And so I would just say that all those issues are important. I don't think it's entirely fair to say that the last election that they said, oh, the economy's fine. I just don't believe that's what happened whatsoever. I believe that people made it clear that it wasn't fine, and I think our leadership knew it. My question is, I'm sorry. Yeah, in terms of questions, I guess I've got more of a comment, which is to say I think that really they're both important, and I don't want to prioritize finances over social issues.
Could I briefly answer that one just a little bit to add to it? I think what we're talking about here isn't an abandonment or even, putting all of these issues on the back burner. But how do we talk about them? Louder? Okay. How do we talk about them in issues?
Here, I used to teach high school speech. Hold your mic like you're Taylor Swift.
And do some dancing.
Is that better? Okay. So I think one of the issues that we often come across when we're looking at social issues and economic issues is that we're not talking about retreating on any of these issues or talking less than of these issues. But how do we make them more palatable to when we're talking to a broader electorate? And oftentimes, none of us know it's a secret that the issues that continuously rank high for most Americans, not only in California, but just most Americans across the country, is wages, housing, and healthcare. All of which are not being addressed in the specificity that we wish to see as young people. One of the things that Bernie Sanders was very good at was talking about Medicare for all. At the time of his 2020 race, I was very involved, and I, almost to a T, could remember how the policy would work, but it's been a while, so forgive me. But the point of it was, there was specificity in it. But one of the things that I often see that people overlook, because they're willing to look at the idea of healthcare and say, yeah, I'd like to have the same amount of healthcare coverage as someone like a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk. And when you paint that idea instead, and you give people the opportunity and the hope that this is the quality of healthcare that we can all see, there's a lot of folks who are willing to stomach that issue over what may or may not be the cost for someone who wants to transition and have the surgeries needed for that. That is a very polarizing issue. And yet, all of that is dismissed when you talk about healthcare for everyone and what that entails. Because newsflash, that's in it. but you don't have to be talking about those specifics, because we know that that's not going to be a galvanizing issue for most electorates. And when we're trying to amass a big coalition, we need to talk in words and with cues that are going to signal to people that we want these broad universal coverages.
I would like to know if, I would like to see that young people are entering politics themselves. And I'd like to know your opinion on, like you're going in your campus, is there any interest in young people entering politics to change the world?
Yeah, I'll say a word on this and then pass it down the line, because I think we all have different communities that we get to interact with.
First, can you repeat her question, because I didn't hear it.
So being on a college campus, well, I guess her question was, it's good to see young people who are involved in politics. And on the college campuses, are you seeing anyone else who's wanting to run? Is that, yeah, wanting to run for office? And the answer to that is yes. I think there are always people who want to get involved, who want to run, particularly in the Young Dems. It's not everyone, I don't know if that's for me, but I know the outgoing vice president of Wine Country Young Dems wants to be president one day, so that's someone running. And I know there's a lot of Young Dems who do end up running for offices. Yeah, I'll pass it down the line and then.
I would agree with that. I personally don't know many people who are interested, right now at least, in running. But yeah, outgoing vice president, I've had conversations with him about that. And I think that there's in certain crowds, people might be willing to sacrifice what they're really interested in order to run, to push certain agendas as well.
Yeah, so I would also agree with what everyone said. Yeah, I don't also know anybody in particular that would want to run for office currently, but even in my field particularly, I have a concentration in land management and policy. And so one particular field that I'm looking for is fire policy, so prescribed burns. And so, and so I guess that's one part of it too, that instead of running for office, certain interests in policy that I'm seeing in my peers. Instead of just running, doing more political activism and policy side, I think is something that is more desired, I would say.
Can I just add something to that? You talked about campaign financing, and I think that's a real deterrent for people to run for office, because they spend half their time begging for funds. And if we had campaign financing, public financing, they could just concentrate on the issues and communicating with voters.
And I think here, locally, one of the things that young people run into a lot of issues with is Sonoma County isn't as wealthy as a county as San Francisco or Los Angeles, so a lot of our elected officials are doing this on a very, very small stipend or as a volunteer. In Petaluma, all the council members, I think only the mayor gets a small stipend, but they're all volunteers. And as a result, we see a specific demographic who has, one, the time, but also the commitment to be able to do all of this stuff, because they're retirees, or perhaps they are only part-time working, but there's a lot more ample time than a college student who is still trying to navigate college debt, go through classes, or someone who's a young professional who is still trying to make their own life and be able to afford their home or rent their home. And there's just a lot more obstacles that make it a lot more difficult. But in terms of some of the people that I've seen now outside of college, there's a degree to which some people kind of tap dance around the idea and dream about that idea, maybe one day being a Congress member or a senator, or in the case with Paul, president. But I think a lot of that starts to crystallize once you're out of school and life kind of starts to fit into place and see where your bandwidth is. But for now, a lot of folks kind of take an activist route because they can kind of pop and go when they want to.
I'm going to stand up so you can see. Into the mic, right up here like Taylor Swift. So I want to talk about branding to you because it seems to me that what Trump is really good at has been to brand the Republican Party in such a way that it appeals to people. And I don't see the Democrats having a brand yet. What I do see is a lot of disillusioned people, both young and middle-aged, who are just so fed up and so discouraged. So they need some hope, and they need some sort of a beacon of light. And in particular, young men, I think, who are really feeling discouraged, the ones I know. So what do you think about how can we brand ourselves?
Sure. There we go. Awesome. Thank you for that question. It's actually perfect. My favorite political theorist is George Lakoff at UC Berkeley, who talks about framing of issues. Just a little recap of what framing is. It's the language you use around issues. So for instance, like tax relief implies that taxes are a burden. So it's that small adjective of relief that changes the way people think about issues. So I think the Democrats, one, need to take a look at the way they frame issues in a much more serious light. The Republican messaging machine is really effective at that. And it dictates the conversation, because when you use their terms, you begin to unknowingly put forward their views. So one, we need to start establishing the way that we frame issues and sticking to that. For instance, instead of saying regulations and restrictions, we say protections, worker protections, because the regulations are there to keep something bad from happening. So it's a protection. But when you say they're going to cut protections, whoa, that's pretty bad. It becomes a lot easier to advocate for and protect worker protections. So that's one thing, is looking at the way we use language as Democrats. But then I think when it comes to branding, we need to be very inclusive. And we've done a good job at that. I feel a lot of young men, while they don't push back against how inclusive the party is and how much it celebrates our pride and diversity, some of them don't necessarily see themselves in or out of that camp. So that leaves them on the fence about where they want to go. I think if we give them the route of being able to see themselves as activists, as part of the community, if we say labor is a great thing, if we encourage unions for people to come together and be strong together, that's what a lot of these young men want. They want community, they want camaraderie. We just need to find ways to do that. And the Republicans do a really good job of finding an enemy. It's the gays and the immigrants. The Democrats haven't really done that. We have Trump, but that's one person who's really good at wriggling out of any issue that he gets into. So we need a broader enemy. And it's kind of tough to find one, unless you're willing to look to the top of the food chain at the oligarch billionaires, like Elon Musk. What an easy target. So when we rally people around those issues, against those people, we begin forming a community that is pro-labor, pro-workers' rights, pro-healthcare, and importantly, anti-exploitation. And when you are anti-exploitation, you become a warrior who fights for people's rights, who fights for your future, who fights for your children's future. I mean, when I think of my involvement in politics, it's so that I can actually have children and that they don't have to live in a wasteland caused by climate change. So that I can afford to own a home and have a backyard where my kids can go out with the dog. It's having that promise ahead of you that really gets you engaged. The Republicans, they rest on their laurels of the American dream and history. You know, they're the conservatives. They're going to conserve things the way they are. Right. That is exactly what they are trying to destroy, but they don't tell you that. So our messaging needs to be, we are going to get back to that, and we're going to do it together as a strong force who lifts each other up. And I think that would be a really effective way of bringing people together. We aren't demonizing members of our community. I mean, unless you have a billionaire living in your neighborhood, then maybe that one poor person. But otherwise, it's a really big coalition that we can bring together, and that's easy to get behind because you can see the tangible benefits. You can see the roofs getting fixed in your community. You can see people smiling when they aren't burdened by debt. I mean, it's a really strong community to build. We just need to be willing to say, screw you, to the people funding us, and do it. It needs to start with the people.
I agree with you 20,000% that part of the reason we're losing our democracy is because the Democrats fail to take control of the narrative and to clean up their messaging. The other thing they haven't done is built a really strong infrastructure. Like you were mentioning, Turning Point was already at SSU. What are you doing to build more infrastructure? Are you connecting with other Democratic, who are you building infrastructure? And thank you for what you're doing. You folks are fabulous.
Thank you. And fortunately, yes, we are building infrastructure. As regional director, it's my goal to create new Young Dems clubs at the SRJC, at College of Marin, at Dominican College. We want to go there, find progressive student leaders or people who haven't been tapped yet. Honestly, that's usually the best, is people who are still waiting to find their way to contribute. And we bring them in, we help them get a club going, we bring them to events like this, we bring them to the SCCA Gala, we bring them to fundraisers, and we empower each other just through having this community. So it's going to different schools and assisting students there. I think that's the best way to build this group. But then also we look at groups like Working Families Party. Both WCYD and SSU Young Dems have been working very closely with them. We think it's important to work with those groups and hold elected officials accountable, especially the ones who they support. We're kind of bridging the gap on the left there, because there's a lot of people on the left, nebulously, who have different degrees of leftness. We just need to bring them together. And the Sonoma County Democratic Party has been doing that. Recently, they brought, I think it was the, what was the group they put together? Sonoma County Solidarity Coalition. And that was a great, that's a great group. They brought in Democratic Socialists of America, Young Dems, Working Families Party, all of these groups that might be considered more to the left of, no, would be considered more to the left of the establishment Dems. And they gave them a voice, they gave them a seat at the table, they've given them jobs in the operation to really get those young voices, those diverse voices heard. And I think that's the solution.
I have a question. I appreciate that comment. I'm interested in knowing what it feels like on the Sonoma State campus as far as politics go. I mean, are people just tuned out, or are they interested, or what's going on your campus?
I have a question that's right on that point. Are the students at Sonoma State unionized? And if not, why not?
Just to answer the unionized question, I am not aware of it. I actually don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But we have a lot of organizers. There's a guy named Dino Ortega, who's a rising senior. Huge organizer. So if anyone's going to get it done, he will.
To answer about how involved students are in politics, I would say it's pretty disappointing from my perspective. Personally, I have been rooming with several MAGA, or Trump supporters, so that's been interesting.
Wow.
And I've seen a shocking amount of that on campus, but it's all from this very uneducated, not understanding perspective, right? And And then I've seen a lot of people just be like, oh yeah, it's bad what's happening. But I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to get out there because I don't have the time, or I don't want to put the time, I don't want to risk anything. I don't want to risk, friendships. So it's been shocking and really disappointing, especially as I've gotten more involved, to see the lack of involvement and commitment to our future.
Do you think that's true on other campuses?
Hard to know. I can't imagine that it's isolated to Sonoma State. I think it's, we see it across young people in general that there is a lack of involvement, which is, why we're trying to push these issues that people can really relate to. And so I would imagine that it's fairly uniform, but yeah, can't be certain for sure.
So I just kind of wanted to add to that point. I feel like a lot of what maybe some people's mindsets are is that other people are going to do it for us. Is that we don't have to put in the work ourselves, that it's just going to happen. That the people who are running, the people who, like when I joined the club, I joined because my friend Amanda was in the club. And I think, it is initially from like an uneducated standpoint. But in knowing that, no, each one of us has to put in the work, each one of us has to advocate, because each individual voice is going to add to a collective voice. So I don't think that that's realized as much in our Sonoma State community.
Also just to add on super quick, about the uneducated point, there's a lot of people who are pretty neutral. I'm on the lacrosse team, so I'm with that kind of crowd. If you aren't familiar with lacrosse guys, they tend to be a little more right. They're a little like yacht guys. Not Sonoma State men's lacrosse, we're different. But that's the tendency. So I was at a party, and I was talking to one of the freshmen about, what I'm doing with the club, and I told him, I'm kind of frustrated about this conversation I had with my mom about healthcare for all. He's like, oh yeah, I don't really know what's going on with that. And when you sit down and explain to them what the issue is with the healthcare industry, why people are so mad, they are receptive. I make a point of being fairly apolitical on the team. That doesn't need to infiltrate there, but when somebody asks me, of course I'll tell them. But when you describe it in very non-biased terms, or seemingly unbiased, of the working middle class against the corporations, it's easy for all of the uneducated people to understand, because a lot of these people, Ray, he came from Roseville, lower middle class family. They see it all. And you just need to explain the issues in a way that they will understand, that isn't so clearly partisan, because the partisan ways of explaining things have been poisoned by both sides. I mean, you say socialism, and everyone's like, what's this guy on? And Fox has done that. But when you describe issues as they are, using different language, a lot of people who wouldn't say they're educated on the topics are receptive, because they want to know. They are curious what's going on. We just need to reach out to them, and I think we've done a good job of that.
Is this on? It is. Thank you. And I'm thinking that kind of downplaying the social aspects of the Democratic Party is one way of bringing more people into the tent who may be uncomfortable with that. Is that a strategy? And whether or not it is, are there other strategies to bring people who are now MAGA, maybe even, over to our side?
So, not to offend, but I'm the only person of color on this panel. And one of the things that I constantly saw at Berkeley, being the liberal bastion that it is, wasn't as liberal as I thought it was going to be, especially on the economic side of things. And when we talk about wanting to bring in a broader coalition of people, I think and this is coming from someone of color, I think we're far more divided on class than we are on race. You would think that most people agree with me on campus, but that's not the case.